Ed, we don't hear you.
Volume's not working. Volume's not working.
You all couldn't hear me, right? I was going like this and nobody said anything, but you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next time you can't hear me, speak up immediately. You see my lips moving? All right, so we're talking about growth and perseverance. Growth is, as you see on the screen, is that sign of maturity. When we grow as a child of God, temperance and patience are two of the qualities that are to be added to our faith. They are among the characteristics that are needed if we're going to make our calling and election sure. And I emphasized in the previous verse of 1 Corinthians 9:25 that everyone is actually, Paul is concerned with you and me. We need to make sure that we are exercising our self-control, that our growth is upward, not stagnant, and not going downward. Our growth always needs to be upward. That is a sign that we're growing. And I should be concerned with my growth to make sure that my calling and my election is sure. That is a sign of growth. And that's what we've been talking about through the last, over the last 4 or 5, or rather 3 or 4 lessons, that the scriptures emphasize that if I am not growing, that there is a danger of me falling away, of me losing interest in the things of the Lord, of me not keeping a strong hold on the upward call, of my anchor in heaven being loosened and eventually losing that anchor. So let's talk about temperance first of all. The King James uses the word temperance and some other translations, but the word temperance in our modern day vernacular is self-control. And I remember I was asked at one time at another place where I preached to preach on social drinking and all things of immorality. And I did. And the leadership came to me and said, okay, well, you preached on that this morning, but you did not hit social drinking and immorality as hard as we'd like for you to hit it. You talked about it, but it was too vague. We want you to come back next week and really just lay it out in clear terms, clear illustrations. So I did. And then after that next Sunday morning sermon, a couple of emails came across my computer, and one of them said, well, you're so concerned about social drinking and about immorality, but have you looked at yourself in the mirror? You're extremely overweight. So what about your self-control? And they're right. Yeah, being obese, so you can't control your food intake. It's part of being temperate or lack of, or thereof. But when we are guilty of a sin, and it's pointed out to us, a sign of immaturity is to quickly say, well, what about you? The old adage is, if the shoe fits, the way I say it is the shoe fits, take it off. Right? Make corrections. But yes, I did receive emails, and then a couple of people came to me weeks later when we had a discussion, said, and they told me, well, that I was fat. I said, okay, well, fine. But temperance means being in control of ourselves. Now, of our actions, of our thoughts, of our mouths or tongues, of our eyes. I mean, in control of everything. Now that's hard, isn't it? And it goes like to what James said, the person that can control their tongue, we would say that person, if you can control your tongue, then you have become perfect. Now, why do you think James said that? Because from the heart flows, or from the mouth flows all the issues of the heart. So the mind, the heart, if you said it, we can't really say, well, I didn't mean to say that. What actually happened is I didn't want to say that out loud. It doesn't mean I didn't think it. So being in control of ourselves is what temperance means. The fruit of the Spirit is not fruits of the Spirit. Sometimes we tend to think about it as the fruits of the Spirit. But the fruit of the Spirit is one complete package. And if you think about it as one complete package, when do you finally reach that perfection? When you get to heaven. So that's why it says growing, striving. That's what's 1 Corinthians 9:25. Everyone who competes in the games exercises. We're always constantly working towards achieving or obtaining that fruit of the Spirit. Right? So it's necessary for us to always be working on myself, disciplining myself. Paul, he talks about buffeting his body, not buffet, but buffeting his body. A boxer is always in training, always in training. So let's look at Acts 24, at some examples. Well, let's just look at Acts 24 for now, in verse 25. This man by the name of Felix, governor. Paul was in prison, and Felix said, you know what, bring me Paul out here. I want him to entertain me. And Paul had money that he was taking to the church, Jerusalem, that was in need. So he thought, well, maybe I can get some money from him too. Some entertainment, some hocus pocus, some miracles, and then some money. But Paul started preaching the gospel to him, what he did not expect. And when Paul got to self-control, he got scared because the man was living in adultery. But as he was discussing righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix became frightened and said, you know what, Paul? I think I've heard enough. Go for now, and when I have opportunity, I will summon you. Well, let's look at the three things that Paul discussed, and they go hand in hand. Righteousness, which means you need to be right. Do the things that are right so that you can be right. Self-control. Control your appetites. Control your lusts, your eyes, your heart. Because if not, or realize that if you're not right and you don't have self-control, there is a judgment to come. And at that judgment, you'll have to answer for not being right and not exercising self-control. And this made Felix to become frightened because he neither had righteousness or self-control. And when someone realizes or understands these things, you either will change or you will flee from the truth. I don't want to hear it. And most of the time they say, I don't want to hear it. Galatians 5, verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit, and this is where I emphasize, it does not say fruits. It's just one complete package, Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is, and let's look at them: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. When it says against such things there is no law, what do you think it means when it says there is no law? Against these things there is no law. You can't get to heaven if you leave one of these out.
Well, you don't have none of them.
You can't get around it. Yeah, you have to have all of these. You can't say, well, I'm pretty good at being kind, but forget love. It doesn't work, does it? Can you be kind without love? How about, can you have self-control but not be good? I mean, can you remove self-control and be good? No, you have to have all of them. Right. Without one, the whole package falls apart. It's all together. 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 24. Or do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives a prize? So here's that illustration of running in a marathon. So the first part of the illustration is carnal. Paul says, you know about races. Only one can get a prize. So here's a spiritual part of the illustration. You need to run in such a way to go to heaven as if you're the only one that's going to win the prize. But that's not true. A lot of people are going to make it to heaven. But you need to make sure that you run as if you were the only one. In other words, don't stop. Don't give up.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, you have to. You can't help anyone else unless you take care of yourself. Everyone
And
who
also take care of your soul.
yeah. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control, the things that we already read about, so that they do it to obtain a perishable wreath. But here's the spiritual part, we're not worried about a trophy on this earth. We're worried about the crown of life, the imperishable wreath. Therefore, run in such a way as not to run aimlessly. I box in such a way as to avoid hitting the air. I'm not shadow boxing, but I strictly discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified, so that I will not be told on Judgment Day, go to the left. But I can be told, well done. And here's your crown. 2 Timothy 4:8, Paul says to the young Timothy preacher, to the young preacher rather, in the future there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. Now, when he says to those who have loved his appearing, it means to all those who have exercised, to all those who have put on the, or worked towards that Galatians 5:22-23 for the 8-part fruit of the Spirit. Yes. Now, there are some people in the Bible that did not practice self-control. Potiphar's wife. Remember that old gal? Well, I don't know if she was old or not, but she's dead now. In Genesis 39, we have her example of Joseph being a servant the one in charge of the finances and, well, being the manager of Potiphar's home. And she was feeling a little frisky and wanted Joseph to have sex with her. And Joseph said no. And she just couldn't control herself. So she was going to have him, whether he liked it or not, or she was going to destroy him. And Joseph said that, made up his mind that he was going to maintain his integrity and be faithful to his master and especially to his God. So he refused her advances, and she then accused him of violating her and her husband's trust. She did not practice or exercise self-control, and Joseph ended up in the dungeon, in the pit, for a second time. David, a man after God's own heart, had a slip-up. Well, I shouldn't say, I'm sorry, I called it a slip-up. It wasn't a slip-up. He deliberately planned it and followed through there in 2 Samuel 11, 2-4, on his evil, disastrous plan of violating Bathsheba. And I get so frustrated. Not too long ago, I was in a Bible class with other preachers where Bathsheba is always blamed, most of the time blamed, I should say, that she was a willing participant, whether she was or wasn't. In the entire narrative, the only one that God condemns is David. Bathsheba is never condemned by God or the prophet. And there's a reason for that, I believe. One, it could be that she is not the focus, or two, David was in control. Nonetheless, David acted out with the lack of self-control, and then he planned the murder of her husband. Which is interesting to me, that when people accuse Bathsheba of being a willing participant, they never go as far as being a willing participant to plot out the murder of her husband. Only David. Then Nebuchadnezzar. Oh, Nebo. He was a character. He was told, you need to give God the glory, and he said okay, and then he didn't. And he ended up eating grass and acting like an animal. In John 8:59, some of the Jews did not practice self-control when Jesus told them to practice self-control. So when he preached, they didn't like it, so they ended up killing him. And then in Acts 7, with Stephen, they didn't like what he said, so they stoned him to death. And then there's this interesting character, 2 letters, M.E. Have you heard about him?
What? Say it again.
M.E.
I don't think so.
You never heard of M.E.?
I don't think
Me.
Yeah, me.
Neat, huh?
Yeah, me. That's the worst one.
Yeah.
Oh, you fell for that one, didn't you?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
I thought it was just abbreviation.
Yeah, abbreviation.
Not a word.
Me. I say that the greatest example of temperance is found in 1 Peter 2, verse 21, and in Matthew 26:50. There's the 2 references if you're writing them down. But we're only going to read 1 Peter 2:21 because it's the same person. Bill, John, you got 1 Peter 2:21?
Man,
It's on the screen if you can read it.
whatever. Come on, I'm here.
Why don't you read that verse that's on the screen?
Okay. Hang on. All right. Got it. Wait a minute. All right. For you have been called for this purpose, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you would follow in his steps.
Keep on going.
He who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. And while being abusively insulted, he did not insult in return. While suffering, he did not threaten, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously.
Thank you, John. So it would have been extremely tempting to have responded when he was being mistreated, beaten, especially when he was innocent, but he didn't. I'm not saying that he didn't have a right to, but he did. Now, I think that the main reason why Jesus didn't respond was because the prophecy said that he wouldn't do it. And to fulfill all prophecy, he didn't do it. But this is an amazing example of self-control. But now let's look at temperance, because that's the other one that we need to be filled with. What is temperance going to look like in our lives? I mean, temperance is what we have been talking about, sorry. When I disagree with my spouse, when my children or grandchildren are disobedient, when someone at work or school doesn't follow the rules or puts someone else at risk, does something to embarrass me, when I make a mistake, somebody cuts me off when I'm driving, when the server at the restaurant just doesn't serve me the way I think I should be served, when our politicians just don't do what we think they should be doing, when the preacher preaches too long, how am I going to react to those things?
We get upset and angry.
Yeah, that's why
sometimes.
that's why I asked when I gave the examples about these people. The last one, me.
Okay.
It's easy, extremely easy for me to point out the flaws of other people in it.
I would say a few of the words that come to my mind would be to remain gentle, calm, patient, wholesome words, just a few.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of posts on Facebook on, we don't know what people are going through. So how they are treating you may be just because of something that's going on in their lives, so they don't have the kindness or the right things to say or act towards you. So we need to keep in mind that we need to be kind to them, because they may need to see that in somebody else because of what's going on with them.
Yeah.
We have to be the example in every situation, and it's not easy, but we do have an example in Jesus that to follow.
That's right. So let's talk about patience now. In view or in light of our study, and the passages we're going to look at, patience has to do with not giving up. The scripture uses patience in this phrase, patient endurance. So that's why I say never giving up. So there are some passages like Romans 5, 1 through 5, 1 Timothy 6, 11, and Hebrews 12, 1, that speaks about patience or perseverance, where patience is needed so that we just don't give up when serving God becomes difficult. But we make up our minds, we predetermine to continue plugging away and not let Satan influence us to quit the race. Because it's so easy to be a quitter. That's just the easiest thing to do.
Yes.
When people try our patience, it's just so easy. There's a preacher who's still living. He's probably in his 90s, out in the valley of Texas, or Corpus Christi area. he is one of the characteristics. He is an excellent preacher, great expositor of the word, great storyteller. But one of the traits that everyone knows him for is being impatient. Impatient with his dog, with his car, with Christians, with everybody, even with himself. So I remember I was probably 15, 16 years old, and several preachers were at my dad's house having a Bible study. He was there for a gospel meeting. And there at the Bible study among preachers, he lost his patience with the preachers and raised his voice and slammed his fist on the table. And the preacher said, "Hey, you need to have patience." He said, "You're right. I'm always sinning because I'm impatient." He said, "So would you?" So let's just pray. So he started praying. He said, "God, I'm asking you to give me patience, but do it right now."
Yeah, well,
I think we all want people to be patient with us,
yeah.
but are we patient with others? And I have these people here on the screen, Peter, the disciples, Israelites, and Christians leaving Jesus. And this is what I'm talking about. Remember in Matthew 14, verses 25 through 33, when Jesus showed up and the apostles were on the boat, and Jesus was walking on water, and these disciples thought that Jesus was a ghost, and they became afraid. And when Peter sees him walking on water, when he realizes it's Jesus, he says, "Well, I want to walk on water too. Command that I walk on water." And Peter did. And what's amazing is that the other apostles, the other disciples, they didn't have enough faith, and they didn't dare even try to walk on water. So the one that's commended for that, in my mind, is Peter. But then he failed. There was a little bit of noise around him. Water started moving, and he took his eyes off Jesus, and he started to sink. Which that's the biggest lesson. "Master, save me." I mean, the man was already walking on water. What else did he want? So Jesus reaches out, pulls him up, and he says, "Man of little faith, how long must I?" Some have interpreted that as Jesus being impatient with Peter, which is not the case. It was to let him know, and the rest, I've brought you this far. You need to work on your faith. How many of us would have given up on Peter a long time before that? Or would we have given up the next time? Or the next time? Or when he denied us? But yet, even after the resurrection, and he asked Peter, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" 3 times. And Peter couldn't get it right, not even with those 3 questions. Because Jesus is asking me, "Do you love me completely, wholeheartedly, to the point that you're willing to give your life for me?" And he says, "I love you like a brother." That's not what I asked you, Peter. He never got the answer right. But finally, Jesus says to him, "Okay, I want you now to go take care of my flock." I mean, even though he couldn't get the answer right, he still leaves him with, "Go and take care of my flocks," or my flock. And then with the rest of the disciples, when they, in John 6:66, when they turned back from following Jesus, but still Jesus, "Come on, gather your wits about you, let's go." Or the Israelites in Exodus, several times, Exodus 14 and Exodus 17, "You should have just left us back in Egypt, where at the very least, I mean, we would have been happier to stay there as slaves and be punished by our taskmasters, but at least we had meat. At least we had leeks and garlic." And I like onions and garlic, but not that much. I could do without. Oh my! And Numbers 11 and Numbers 20, all those times that they complained. Or there's I remember a brother that he struggled with an addiction, and he came forward after a sermon, and he said he wanted to be restored. So I talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, I'm having problems with my addiction." I said, "Sure, yeah, let's pray for it." I announced it to the church, sang a song, and church prayed for him. A couple of weeks later, he came forward again. He said, I fell again. Well, we'll go and keep on praying. And we started counseling and got him enrolled in a AA meeting. I met with them frequently. 3-4 weeks later, he came forward again. And somebody at church said, wait a second. This is a habit now. Now, I'm not going to be praying for him that many more times. I mean, he's just playing with the church, playing with God. This is the 3rd time he's come forward for the same sin. I'm done with him. I'm going to write him off. Well, that's so sad. 70 times 7. And this is someone that does not suffer from that addiction, but I tell you what, we all suffer from addiction of one kind or another. I mean, I'm not talking about a drug addiction or food addiction, but sin addiction. We all sin. So what happens to our patience in that case? But then we have those examples in the Bible of those that were persevering. In our Bible reading last night, you should have read about Abraham, right? What struck me, if my daughter picked it up immediately, my oldest daughter, she said, well, Abraham lied again. He didn't learn the first time. I said, honey, well, how about you? You know, well, okay. But yeah, he did lie again. And then he tried to say, well, really it's not a lie because she is my sister, you know, lying about Sarah being, she is my sister, half sister. I mean, no. The intent, and then he rats himself out. I told her, you know, a long time ago when we got married, anybody ever ask you? No. But anyway, these 3 here are great examples of perseverance. Perseverance when it matters. So let's come to an end here and ask these questions about patience and perseverance, one and the same, in areas in our lives where it matters that we demonstrate it. There's some folks that they're the only Christian, or at least faithful Christian, in their family. And that's very difficult because they're fighting not only a battle in the world, but in their very own home. And that is a test because that family is going to tell them, why are you going to church and we want to have a family gathering or a family outing on a Sunday and you say you can't go, so you got to go to church. Or when we travel, you always ruin everything because where you are, where we go, you have to find a church. No, and sometimes it's a lot easier for that person to say, it's just this one Sunday, let's just go. So you got to persevere in those moments of difficulty. Or when the trials of life surround me that, here recently I put on Facebook where a family in Alabama, the mother in her 30s died, left children behind. And that's difficult. You know, that's when we tend to ask, why me? Why? But that's time and chance happens to everybody. It's not that God picked that person, that family, and I'm gonna, no. You know, again, with our Bible reading, one of my children said, well, Dad, why did God pick on Job like that? And I said, honey, just think about it this way. The devil had come from looking at all the people in the world, traveling the ends of the earth, And God said, of all the men, of all the women, this is the one that I have my true confidence in. He won't leave me. So in that respect, God had a lot of faith in that one man. And he proved him right. She says, so lucky? I said, no, not lucky, but righteous.
God knew his heart
Righteous.
in the beginning.
So we have every day opportunities to show our perseverance or to test our perseverance, and then if it's lacking, to work on it. And in the next lesson, the next 3 lessons that we have, we're going to wrap all these things together that we talked about, adding to our faith all of these things. How to do this? What is the plan that God has given us to grow and mature, to persevere, to have temperance, patience, temperance, self-control, the entire fruit of the Spirit? How is it that we can add all these things? What is the plan of attack that God has given us? Are there any questions or comments on what we talked about? Anyone in Zoom land? All right, thank you. And Sister Ryan's, how about them Texans? You'll have a good day.
How about them Texans?
You better believe it. Looking forward to the next game.
Tomorrow at 3:30?
You better believe it. Are you going to be there?
No, it's snowing up there. No. I'm
Okay.
staying home.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you.
Good lesson, Edward.
Thank you.
Snowing in